deputies at an LA women's jail are accused of sexual abuse. Put it up full blast. This is so sad. So a new lawsuit has been filed on behalf of 38 current and former detainees at the Los Angeles County Women's Jail. It alleges that male deputies watched inmates shower, groped women, and commented on their appearance while they were unclothed. A federal lawsuit filed on behalf of dozens of current and former inmates in Los Angeles County's Women's Jail claims male correctional officers watched them shower, harassed these women, groped them, and retaliated when the alleged abuses were reported. The suit accuses deputies of taking advantage of women incarcerated at Century Regional Detention Facility in Lynwood. The case comes amid renewed scrutiny of how the Sheriff's Department handles abuse claims. Records reviewed by the Times show jail inmates have made nearly 600 allegations of sexual abuse or harassment against staff since 2021. But none have been referred to the LA County District Attorney's Office for prosecution, not one. Brian Dunn, managing partner and lead civil rights attorney with the Cochran firm, which brought the case on behalf of 38 women in late October, said in an interview that dozens of inmates shared, quote, chilling allegations of brazen sexual abuse and harassment. Let me remind everyone, when a crime is reported, that crime should be investigated, period, especially when you're dealing with such a large distinction between authority. You have someone of extreme authority violating a person that has basically no authority inside of a jail. So the federal lawsuit has been filed. So the Sheriff's Department has responded. The Sheriff's Department said in a statement that after learning about Dunn's lawsuit, it initiated a review of the claims to ensure that all appropriate investigative and administrative policies would be followed. Let's go to the Cochran firm and what the lead attorney said, quote, it seemed to be happening with such frequency that it was like a practice. Now, what does that mean? That means culture. It was like a practice. This is something that has been accepted, end quote. He said, quote, it's heartbreaking for me to hear these women crying and the only thing you can do is sue. Now, why is that? Because the powers that be, including the federal government, the Department of Justice, they're not going to do a damn thing. That's why. Because they're feckless leaders and they could care less about prosecuting people who are doing the same thing that they're trying to protect their boss from being exposed of. The Sheriff's Department also said the safety and dignity and constitutional rights of every individual in our custody remain our top priority. We are committed to transparent operations, thorough investigations, maintaining the highest standards of professional conduct, blah, blah, blah. ChatGPT wrote that. The civil complaints in the Central District of California says abuses occurred in the Lynwood Jail's administrative segregation unit, also known as the Hole. The lawsuit claims women were often sent there for disciplinary purposes and that deputies would watch as they showered nude. The suit says the practice violates a federal law called the Prison Elimination Act, which prohibits cross-gender viewing by staff. Before I continue, I'm going to say this. When you have an atmosphere steeped in this kind of sexism and assault and inappropriateness, the women who work at that facility, they are not being treated fairly either. I'm encouraging the women and those who are allies to women to speak up on behalf of the incarcerated because there is no distinction between you and them. There's no distinction. That facility doesn't make you better and it doesn't make them worse. Here's the distinction. You're either good or bad. You're either on the right side or the wrong side. You're either part of the corruption or you're against it. That's it. That's the distinction here. There's more. The civil complaint filed in the Central District of California said abuses occurred in the segregated unit. The complaint alleges a systematic and ongoing practice which concerns the cross-gender viewing of completely nude female inmates by male correctional officers. It describes an area next to the shower stalls referred to by inmates and deputies as the cop shop, from which male correctional officers, quote, routinely engage in frequent and prolonged, unobstructed viewing of entire nude bodies of female inmates taking showers. It's a damn shame. That's a crime. You think a peeping Tom statute don't apply just because you're in a jail? You're still under the jurisdiction of the county. The peeping Tom statute still apply. Privacy laws still apply. It's a jail. You know what's ironic about jail? You haven't lost any constitutional rights. You can still vote from jail. You're not a convicted felon. You have been accused. You are innocent unless they prove you're guilty. You just happen to be in a facility that restricts some of your mobility, but all of your rights are still there, which means that all of these violations should be criminal in their prosecution. That is my opinion. While escorting women to the stalls, the complaint states male guards allegedly intentionally pressed their crotches against the handcuffed hands of the female inmates and intentionally fondled the inmates' hips, buttocks, and bodies in a sexual manner, end quote. Deputies, quote, routinely and intentionally set the water temperature at a scalding or near scalding level. That's assault. The complaint added, which forces the female inmates to take showers, to move hurriedly and squirm erratically, and often results in the female inmates' breasts jiggling and wiggling demonstrably in full view of the male correctional officers in the adjacent cop shop. This is just extreme, insane, and immature, and obviously evil. There's more. Commission Chair Haley Broder described the inmates as some of the most vulnerable women on earth. They can't do anything. They're locked in cells and being retaliated against if they report it. Let's put them up. Defendants in the federal lawsuit include LA County Sheriff Robert Luna and 3 of his predecessors and a dozen jail staffers. Last month, the Times reported that out of 592 inmate claims of sexual abuse or harassment by deputies filed since 2021, none, not one, were deemed substantiated by Sheriff's Department investigators. That goes against the standard of statistical data. Out of 100%, not 1% needed corrective action, not one. Quote, the public is not getting the truth about or the truth from the Sheriff's Department. We deserve a real accurate data. We deserve real accurate data about people being assaulted, sexually violated in our jails, not hogwash, says Hans Johnson, who is chair of the Los Angeles County Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commission. This is sad, obviously. We'll go on to stay on top of this story. Jackson, what are your thoughts?
I think one of the most important things you pointed out is the culture that existed in this environment and how culture permeates itself in such a way that it can attract people who can abuse, particularly in systems like the prison system, the foster care system, nursing homes, different types of hospitals, clinics of various sorts, where people who may be considered the underclass of society or the throwaways or the untouchables in some form or fashion, it's easier to get away with stuff like this because it's more difficult to get the general public not necessarily to care, because I think if you were to run this by the majority of people, you know, we would understand that this is wrong and people would be against it. But to actually get people to mobilize about stuff like this is another story. Whereas issues like wages and the economy overall, healthcare, education, you know, take center stage over stuff like this. So it's important that we continue to tell stories like this on this channel and elsewhere, because obviously these are human beings who deserve more dignity and respect than this. And our prison industrial complex is a mess. There's so many people in prison who really don't need to be there. They're not being rehabilitated. And when they come out, there's no support for them to become a better, more productive part of society. So this is just a tragedy through and through.